Welcome back to another episode of the Yellowhammer Sports Podcast. I'm your host, CJ Duncan. And as most of you can imagine, I am on cloud nine right now. What a weekend of games that we had. But before we jump into our recap of what happened from this past weekend, I would like to introduce our guest this week. He has been in sports he has been a sports media personality for the last 4 decades. He has worked in roles with Troy Sports Radio, Fox, WCOV, The Score. He's currently the host of the Max Roundtable Sports Radio, an affiliate of ESPN The Ticket. Also, prior to his life in journalism, he was an assistant athletic director at Faulkner University. He has been called the godfather of Faulkner sports information. Doug Amos, how are we doing today?
We're good. I'm just curious, CJ. This is a little painful for me. You see the color of my wall behind me. I hadn't heard from you in 20 years, covered your high school career. But after Diego Pavia does what Diego Pavia does, all of a sudden, CJ Duncan, former Vanderbilt stud, wants to talk to Doug. So
Yeah,
here I
yeah.
am taking the medicine. Have fun with me. Do whatever you will. But yeah, congratulations, man. I was telling somebody last night, CJ, about I saw where Vanderbilt was doing a lot of things to try to commemorate that win. I think they're trying to sell off some things from the state. And I'm going, absolutely, they should be doing that. Nobody should be pushing back on that. That's exactly what Vanderbilt should do.
Well, Doug, it's a pleasure to see you. I know it's been a long time. I was off the face of the map. It feels like when I went up to Nashville, but it's so good to reconnect with a lot of old friends and friendly faces. And I hate it had to be this way, but here we are. It's a special moment for my university. Things like this don't happen very often. So we are definitely leaning into what this was and hopefully what this can be for the next few years, decades, generations to come for this program. We've seen a lot of dark days, and so this gives us a little hope that there are better days to come. But I looked out as this weekend came up. I looked at the slate of games and I said, okay, I mean, it's a fine weekend. I didn't think there was any game outside of the Georgia Auburn game that was one that I just really wanted to sit down and watch. I mean, of course, I'll watch football all day because it's the SEC, but none that really got me too excited. But then it turns out to be one of the best weekends of the season.
And
So
see, the reason for that, CJ, I've said it 100 times. The Saturdays you don't think are going to provide are the ones that do. The ones
yes.
that you hang your hat on and say, "Oh, we got a whale of a Saturday." At the end of the day, you're going, "Well, that was kind of a dud, actually." But when you
Uh-huh.
when you got when you got A&M blasting Missouri, then
Yes.
you roll right into Vanderbilt upsetting Alabama, and there was nothing fluky about that. Vanderbilt was the
Hmm.
better team on the field for 60 minutes. Then you got Arkansas
Hmm.
beating Tennessee, who we thought was unflappable. So, and then the crazy comeback late by Miami to win at Cal. So it was 4 games that kind of grabbed you and never let go.
I mean, you couldn't leave the TV all Saturday long. And I'm glad you brought up the Tennessee loss as well. So, I mean, it just kept getting better and better for me as a Vanderbilt Commodore. We win and then Tennessee loses. That's usually how we like our Saturdays to go. But Doug, tell me what's going on with Alabama. What did you see this weekend? What what was Alabama doing that led to, this loss?
Well, I think you've got to start obviously on the defensive side of the ball. Vanderbilt held the ball for over 42 minutes of the game. It looked as if Alabama was not playing multiple defenses; they were just kind of in a regular set. And I think the former New Mexico State coach that came with Diego Pavia kind of loved that and saw. I know he's just a consultant, I guess, but he's doing a lot of consulting, I think, with Clark Lee and the guys on the offensive staff. But I think it all goes back to Kane Womack and the Alabama defense. He's really received most of the blows this week since that game on Saturday. It looked as if Vanderbilt. I don't know this for a fact, but I'm going to say it, CJ. I think Clark Lee, who you have to be proud of as being a Vanderbilt dude too, right? I think Clark Lee told his kids, they had an off week. They literally were turning the scoreboard on during practice with made up stats showing Vanderbilt winning the game and putting that thought in the players' heads. And I think Clark Lee told them late last week, look, guys, we're not going to be intimidated by them. We're going to go out there and take it to them. And we're going to take it to them from the start. You let them know that you're here. You let them know that this isn't the old Vandy. This is a new Vandy. And that's why I think, CJ, there was so much barking during the game. It was a chippy game from the start. And I think Vanderbilt took the upper hand and Alabama never recovered. And Alabama lost their composure. Alabama wasn't disciplined. And then when you put a guy out there that's just a stinking winner that can make plays like Diego Pavia, then you've got an opportunity for something like that to happen.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I would imagine that practice went a lot like that. It's one of those things when you get into a David and Goliath situation, right? You get big, bad Alabama coming into your stadium, and Alabama usually wins games coming out of the locker room just based on size, stature, and name recognition. But I think what Clark Lee was able to do during the week, kind of prepared the guys for say, hey, look, we're not worried about what they're doing. We have to worry about us. We have to worry about us, and we got to punch them in the mouth early, right? And so in those situations, David and Goliath, if you're technically the more superior team or have more superior talent, you either come out and you establish your dominance early on, right? Kill the will of the lesser team in this situation, or you come out sleepwalking. Right. And I think Alabama came out sleepwalking. They didn't match the intensity or the physicality of Vanderbilt. And before they knew it, they were down 2 possessions. Well, we're a team that we don't throw the ball all over the yard, right? That's not what we do. We run the ball, we use the creativity and the grit of somebody like Diego, and we just let him do his thing, but we keep the ball on the ground. And so if you let us jump out to a lead, now we're controlling possession, it makes it hard for a comeback.
And Alabama couldn't stop them. I mean, 12 of 18 on third downs, a week after Alabama gave up 8 fourth down conversions, 5 on plays, 3 on penalties. This defense has not been able to get off the field. And when you combine that with what you just said, more of a creative running game, or at least a game that's within a 5-yard circumference of the ball, with the shuttle passes and the options that Diego ran with the running backs. The lone exception, the long pass on 4th and 1, which was one of the most incredible plays Diego's ever made. I mean, the guy there's no way he could have seen him open. He threw him open. Yes. And I'm sure you've been thrown open in your day. And it was just it was an incredible play. And I believe that play and the sack fumble were the 2 plays that ultimately allowed Vanderbilt to get out of there with a big win.
And wasn't that such a Diego play, though? It looked like the call was for there to be a run, a quarterback sweep of sorts, with an option to pass. And the guys that were options to pass on his play side were covered. Alabama did everything they were supposed to do, but it feels like the backside corner may have fell asleep thinking, no way this guy's going to throw the ball, right? This guy, he's out of the play. But as soon as you relax, that's what Diego Pavia he pops up on you. Whether he's running it or throwing it, he'll sneak up on you, and either he's running you over, he's juking you out of your shoes, or he's throwing it over your head.
One other play I'd like for us to discuss, and then with all due respect, I'm getting a little nauseous. We need to move on here. But, was the second on the last drive after Alabama scored, kicked off. Not a great kickoff return for Vanderbilt. Lost 2 yards on first down. It's 2nd and 12. looks like Alabama has the defense played perfectly. A defender running at Pavia, he has to kind of sidearm it out of there, and it was pinpoint to the receiver. Like he must have had 2 feet to get that
Yes.
ball in there where he did, and he did. You know what play I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely.
For 95% of the play, it appeared that Alabama had defended it well, and it was going to be 3rd and long. Then all of a sudden, it's a first down, and really game, set, match from there.
It, I like to describe it as just the perfect storm. Some days you're just better than the other team. If this game would have happened a few other times, I don't know if it would have turned out in our favor. But I'm just glad on this particular day it did. And our program has a little bit more hope. But there's also hope for Alabama. Let's move back toward Alabama here. It is a 12-team playoff, right? So one loss doesn't kill you, and maybe not even 2 losses. What does Alabama need to do going into this next week against South Carolina to kind of bounce back and get back on this playoff run?
We said all during the summer on my show that, Kalen DeBoer will find out what it's like to be the Alabama coach when he loses a game.
Mhm.
We didn't expect it to be this game. Some expected it to be last week against Georgia. Some expected it to be 2 weeks against Tennessee, but ahead against Tennessee. But it's been tough for him this week. People are criticizing the T-shirt he was wearing during the game.
I saw
Probably
that.
if they found out what socks he was wearing, they'd be critical of that too. But it's my understanding. I heard a clip, CJ, from Tim Smith. He's an Alabama defensive lineman, about how it's different this week than it was before. They're seeing a different side of Kalen DeBoer. Like I think he used the phrase, he's busted through his shell. So I think everything's still out in front for Alabama. I don't think a 9-3 Alabama team makes the playoff when one of them's against Vanderbilt. And I'm sorry, I'm not being disrespectful to Vanderbilt,
No,
but
absolutely.
Vanderbilt is considered now. I think they're going to win more games. I think they're going to have a chance to maybe get to a bowl game. But the point being, if you lose 3, you better have lost to 3 top 10 teams or top 5 teams.
Absolutely.
I think Alabama's got 1 left.
Yes.
And that's why I think this week, I suspect Alabama will play okay, not great. I do think they beat South Carolina. I don't think we're going to Saturday night, CJ, go, wow, Alabama's back. I think Alabama will struggle a bit, but win. Alabama's season, in my mind, kind of hinges on 2 weeks from now, Saturday in Knoxville against Tennessee.
Yeah. And to your point, perception is reality, especially when you have a committee that's voting on playoff teams. So regardless of what I think about Vanderbilt, it's up to the committee and Vanderbilt's history and what they've done over the course of the season. At the end of the day, we still lost to Georgia State this year, right? So that's why a Vanderbilt loss, hurts as bad as it does. But, I agree with you. I mean, I think some people forget Saban lost to ULM at one point, right? And he still was able to go on a run of 6 national championships. So I'm going to give Kalen DeBoer some time.
Can I toss something in right there, though?
Yeah, please.
I've heard that all week. Saban lost to ULM in his first year when the program was a mess. Okay. 2007, he hadn't even had a full recruiting class. He was absolutely filtering through the good guys from the bad guys. There was a lot of controversy around that. I don't know if you remember, but that was the year that there was a textbook issue with some Alabama players selling their textbooks. They ended up having to vacate wins. So that was about as uncommon a Nick Saban year as you could ever imagine. Then he got the recruiting class with Julio Jones. That's when it started, 2008 forward. The loss to ULM, albeit embarrassing, was not at all like the loss to Vanderbilt on Saturday, because Alabama's program was ranked number 1 in the country at the game. They weren't ranked against ULM. So what Vanderbilt did Saturday had not been done in an Alabama game in my lifetime. I
Yes.
just wanted to make sure we got that clarified.
Yeah, no, for sure. This is definitely it's totally different. But I do think DeBoer also faces his own challenges.
Yeah.
Those challenges were a lot different, but when you're dealing with portal, when you're dealing with NIL with kids that probably think a little different, have a different attitude about what football and what Alabama means to them, I think there are a lot of challenges. And then we see, leadership on the team. I won't call any names. Everyone knows what happened, but at the end of that game, you see how leadership acts as well. So I think DeBoer has a
Malachi
lot.
Moore.
Yes, I think DeBoer has his own challenges. I'm going to give him time to ease into. He was easing into the situation, but it sounds like this week of practice, he's putting his foot on the pedal. So, but let's dive into the Auburn game. I think Auburn is very happy that they're going into a bye week. They needed it the worst way. They are now 2-4, 0-3 in conference play. What did you see on Saturday? And is this season kind of a wash now for Auburn, or do you see some positivity coming out of Saturday?
What I suspect, and after talking to a lot of people this week related to this program, I believe they're going to start playing their young studs a lot more. They should. They've got some guys on this team like Riddick and some of these younger defender guys and these receivers with Malcolm Simmons. I think the team plays hard, CJ. The one thing I don't think has been a problem has been a lack of effort. I don't think that's been the case at all. There is a massive disconnect between Peyton Thorne and Hugh Freeze. And it
Absolutely.
keeps coming up every week. Something comes up every week. This week, after the game, Hugh Freeze said something about the 4th and 1, early fourth quarter, first play of the fourth quarter. And Auburn looked messed up, and he said that he changed the play. Well, now it's come out that it wasn't a change of the play. It was an adjustment of the play that the coaches had worked on with Peyton, and Hugh Freeze wasn't aware of it. I mean, I'm going like, what's going on with the communication between the head coach, who is an offensive-minded coach, CJ, and their fifth-year quarterback that started 4 years in major college football? I think we can trace Auburn's problems all the way back to not going into the transfer portal in the
Yes.
offseason,
Mhm.
because this team's not going to – they've played 4 teams that are okay. They have yet to play a great team except Georgia, but the losses to Cal, Arkansas, and Oklahoma aren't against, teams threatening to go to the playoffs. I think this team's going to win about 5 games, maybe, and then we'll see what he can do with the quarterback position.
Yeah, that was a clear mistake. Not jump into the portal to try to find a quarterback. Although I think Peyton Thorne has gotten better as the season has progressed, in my opinion. But with all the talent on the team, and especially at the receiver position, if you just had somebody that could just get them the ball, I feel like you would see a different Auburn ball club. But this weekend, the final score is 31-13, but to me, that doesn't tell the whole story. I do think Auburn fought. I do think that they hung around. It's not like Georgia just dominated them. I always like to tell people the last 2 minutes of the first half and the first 2 minutes of the second half is like really the most important time of a game, right? That's where momentum usually swings right there. You don't want a team to have a 2-for-1 where they score right before half and then score again on you right after half. And when Georgia scored at halftime, I said, uh-oh, this is a key moment, Auburn, and then they got the blocked field goal as well. I said, this could really get out of hand, but then Auburn fought back with the Jarquez Hunter touchdown right after half. So they were doing super well, and then you had the 4th and 1 play. And like you said, visibly, you could see Hugh Freeze almost going after Peyton Thorne, where they're just not on the same page at all. I do see some positivity within this team. I mean, Lambert Smith has been excellent this year, and Jarquez Hunter has been great. And at times, the defensive line has played at an extremely high level. But I think Peyton Thorne got sacked several times, and the secondary still has some issues covering guys man to man. Those things are hard to fix in season, right? It's going to take more than a bye week. So what do you think Hugh Freeze is telling the team now over the course of this week to try to head in the right direction as we're, getting to about the halfway point of the season?
They really don't have any choice. I don't suspect, in fact, I feel strongly about this, that Auburn's 2025 starting quarterback is not on the roster. Okay.
Mhm.
He's going to either go into the portal and get somebody that he thinks can upgrade him, or he's going to roll the dice with Deuce Knight and just
Mhm.
see what he can do as a pure freshman. I don't suggest the latter. I suggest the former. But I think the pressure is off this team from a let's go reach a goal thing. I think the fan base, who I hear from every day, is more excited about seeing these young guys develop, even if that results in maybe not getting a win that maybe they could get. I think most Auburn fans are thrilled to death with Malcolm Simmons, but kind of confused by Cam Coleman, who really hasn't done much. Neither has Perry Thompson. And those were the two receiver guys. You played receiver.
Mhm.
What is it about making that jump from high school to college where some immediately become factors, i.e., Ryan Williams, and some don't, i.e., Cam Coleman in the first half of the season?
Well, I think it's development, right? Sometimes you have guys who are just physically better, physically bigger, stronger, faster than the guys they play in high school. And that's what they lean on. That's what they depend on in high school. And that's what makes them so dominant. But they're not being developed to be receivers. There's a real art to being a receiver. And it takes time to really get there. And it takes a lot of attention to detail to get there. So when you get to college and you haven't done those things right, you haven't taken each step to be prepared to be a college receiver or even an NFL receiver, it's going to be very tough because the guy across from you, guess what? He's just as athletic and he's
Yeah.
probably actually faster than you are, right? So you can't just you can't run full speed and just expect to get the ball or expect to catch the ball. No, he's in your hip. He's on scholarship too. That's what my dad used to tell me all the time. He's on scholarship too. So how are you going to separate yourself? I think what Cam Coleman needs, he needs a full offseason with a receiver coach or a former Auburn guy who's a receiver that can really teach him the game and teach him the art of playing the receiver position. You see the guys at Alabama and even Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State.
Yeah.
They're just polished already. When you see them run their routes, they're getting separation on the routes. And after they catch the ball, that's when the special stuff comes, right? I think Cam Coleman has special stuff, but he can't handle everything before the catch. And with a receiver, confidence matters so much. And so once you drop that first ball, you want to go right back to that guy. Because if you don't, now he's thinking about it too much. He's thinking. And now you see a bunch of drops in a row instead of him having that confidence that, hey, listen, I'm Cam Coleman. I'm here for a reason. This is my program. I'm going to be the leader of this team one day. Let's keep it rolling. But I think that right now, he just has to become more polished. And once that happens, you'll start to see an ascension. It's still early. He's a freshman. I mean, these guys at Alabama and Ohio State, I mean, this doesn't happen. They are a rarity, right? This doesn't happen this consistently and this quickly. So I want to give Cam Coleman a break, but in due time, he will be right up there in the same conversation with those guys.
And I agree with you. I mean, you don't just forget.
Mhm.
I agree with your development part. So I'm curious what you think about heading to Lexington for your club. Will they be still on a cloud and maybe not play as well? Will they ride the momentum there? That's going to be interesting for me to see Saturday night.
It is Kentucky's always been a team that we have just fought with. Like the games are always ugly. They're always physical. It always comes down to the fourth quarter. And I would imagine this game would be very similar. But it's going to be a tough game for us. Of course, I'm going to lean with my Commodores always, but where Kentucky really shines is their defensive line. You know, they have a first rounder on that defensive line who really is disruptive. And as you know, and as we saw this weekend, we really lean into our run game and our offensive line. We lean on them to push guys around and create holes for Diego and kind of our smaller backs. We don't have a back that we hand it off to and he just makes his own hole. So it's going to be an interesting game. It's going to be a tough game. It is Lexington at night, which gets very, very loud. It's a very underrated road venue. I would like to think that we pull this one out, but I do think it's going to come down to the last few possessions in the fourth quarter.
You know, it looks like, CJ, you and I are going to be in front of a TV for 12 hours again, if not longer. Alabama, South Carolina opens the deal. Then Texas and Oklahoma play that afternoon. And then a trio of intriguing SEC games at night with Florida at Tennessee, Ole Miss at LSU, and Vanderbilt at Kentucky. So that's going to be a fun slate. I hope Alabama gets my day started off better than the middle of my day was last Saturday. But I think, CJ, the addition of Oklahoma and Texas has allowed this league to really not have a dud of a week. You know, there have been times, and you know this, where we've looked at the schedule and go, oh, gosh, get me to the following week. But when you add two quality teams, then that makes everybody play more good games. And we, the fans and the media, are the beneficiaries of that.
Absolutely. And then, you know, when you take out the divisions within the conference, you're starting to see these kind of rivalry games come earlier in the season. So they're kind of spread out. You have something to look forward to each year. And, you know, another game that has playoff implications is the Ohio State-Oregon game. I mean, I think down here in SEC country, we'll tune into that just to see, hey, we may see one of these teams. And then you've got Penn State going to USC. I think Penn State's the better team, but you know, when you have to make a flight that long with college kids, you never know what happens. Those are two games I'll also be looking forward to. Well, Doug, I want to thank you again for your time. This has been awesome. I'd love to get on your show at some point.
Let's do it.
We got to get our schedules together, sync those schedules. But it was a pleasure talking ball with you today. That'll wrap up our show for this week. We look forward to talking more SEC ball with you guys next week. Follow the Yellowhammer News on Twitter, YouTube, Spotify for all your Yellowhammer Sports content. And we thank you again for tuning in.